Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Energy Newsbeat podcast. My name's Stuart Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group. I'll tell you what, today I am recording this podcast with a true friend of the show, Ronald Stein. He is an author, and I mean, he has got some great books out there, but let's talk about today's inauguration. We have President Trump rolling in, and I mean, it is entertainment like you couldn't believe. But when he says he's going to drill, baby, drill, that's going to be a little bit tougher to say drill, baby, drill when fiscally responsible should be the way to say it, because I don't think the oil companies are just going to throw money away. They're going to be giving money back to their investors. But today's discussion is really with Ronald Stein and his opinions on what's going on. How are you today, Ronald?
Stu, doing fantastic.
Drill, baby, drill when fiscally responsible. That does not sound like a political campaign stump speech, does it?
Well, fiscal responsibility is going electric is irresponsible because electricity, everybody wants electricity.
Right.
Electricity came after oil. You can't make electricity unless you have oil to make all the products that make the computers, the wires, the insulation, the air conditioning.
Right.
And without that, there is no electricity.
And the diesel and everything else is just, several years ago, Ronald, I went out and I was tracking the more money that we have been putting into fossil fuels, the more money that was spent on renewable energy, the more fossil fuels were used. For years, we've always heard, it's going to be a peak oil, and then and it keeps going up and up and up. So the more money that has been put into renewables, every year I keep seeing more and more fossil fuels being used. So there's a correlation. The more money you spend in renewable energy, the more fossil fuels are used. Call it Turley's Law if you want, but it is happening.
Well, you're right, because wind and solar is really just a redundant electrical system. And interestingly, if the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining, you need reliable power to deploy. And reliable power is coming from wind and solar and hydro and nuclear. And, all the components are made from oil. That's the thing that people do not understand.
Your article you sent me, I think 2 weeks ago, was absolutely wonderful on the 6,000 products that are made out of oil and gas. Then you have fertilizer with natural gas. And quite honestly, AI is killing actually the renewable industry. AI is absolutely wiping it out because they need data centers. Well, data centers aren't going to happen.
Yeah, renewable energy is so-called wind and solar, but that is unreliable. Artificial intelligence need continuous electricity. Computers need continuous electricity. If you're in the operating room, you want continuous electricity. You don't want the lights to go out when the wind stops blowing.
You don't want to hear oops from your doctor.
It's really just a redundant source of electricity. And we're spending a lot of money in digging up the world to build those components, the lithium and the cobalt to build wind and solar and EV batteries is coming from developing countries. They have no labor controls, no environmental laws, and we're letting people have yellow, brown, and black skin so we can get this lithium and cobalt so we can go green.
Right.
It's really unethical and immoral.
When you've got California was importing horrific amounts of oil from Iraq, sanctioned countries. And so you sit back and take a look. Why doesn't California unleash its own oil? Kern County is a phenomenal resource.
On the contrary, California, all the Democratic governors want to reduce in-state oil production because they have the mindset, we're going to get rid of oil, we're going to run this world on wind and solar. Stu, it's impossible. You'd have nothing to run if you can't make it out of oil. What we need is a replacement for oil. I'm all in favor of getting rid of oil if there's a replacement. But we've got 200 years to replace it and been unable to do it. In fact, every year we're more and more dependent on the products that come out of fossil fuels. And wind and solar, they can make nothing. They can't make wind, they can't make sulfur, and they can't make asphalt, they just can't make anything. They can just generate electricity if the wind is blowing.
Well, maybe if we got the agencies cleaned up, and boy, Lee Zeldin is going to have his work cut out for him with the EPA. Holy smokes, Batman, that is going to be a chore. Did you hear this morning? Here we are on the 20th. And the Biden administration approved another 2.4 gigawatts of offshore wind. They approved it just before President Trump takes office so he can put the offshore wind ban in a you can't buy this kind of entertainment. Oh my gosh.
No, it's amazing. And what do you need electricity for if you get rid of oil? Because, everything needs oil. Is made from, everything that's made from oil uses electricity. The iPads, the iPhones.
Right.
If you can't make those things, they won't need electricity.
It's funny. Most Californians don't understand that even though they've got rid of no coal plants in California, there's one coal plant in Nevada that they import electricity from. But why has coal use in California gone up over all these years? It's coking coal for asphalt, and for cement. And you sit here and kind of go, they have not got rid of coal yet.
Yeah, it's the blind leading the blind. And you're right. We have, California now imports about 30% of its electricity from adjoining states. And we shut down in-state coal power plants.
Right.
So we can import electricity from coal power plants outside the state of California.
It's like us, Germany has deindustrialized so badly. I feel so sorry for the German people that have elected these green energy policy folks in. The deindustrialization of Germany has almost completely done. You now have Chancellor Schultz. I think he's related to Sergeant Schultz. I see nothing. and you're seeing him. He is now having to face a vote of no confidence, and they're having to come up against a new election in a few months. And his person running against him, she has said she wants to reopen the Nord Stream pipeline that was blown up. There's one of those there's 4 Nord Stream pipelines. One of them is still there. So now, if you deindustrialize, you close your nuclear plant, you reopen coal plants, and then you try to do this, isn't that what California is doing?
Well, Germany was the first country to go green. They now have the most expensive electricity in the world. Right. California is right behind them. We have the second most expensive electricity in the world. California, we got the most expensive electricity in the country. Because we're trying to get rid of oil, we have the most expensive fuel in the country. And that is contributory to everything going up. The cost of lettuce goes up, the cost of bananas goes up, and the cost of labor is going up. And it is extremely inflationary. And it's endless. And electricity by itself can't run the world.
I don't get it. I really don't get it. When we sit back and we take a look at the other day, who Californians are buying their gasoline from is amazing. And when you sit back and look at the imports of products that we would have so much less impact on the environment if I was a Californian and you refined it locally with strict refineries in the United States. You had great looking at making sure everything was done properly, and you didn't have to bring it in. China's increasing their downstream capacity. Let's watch how much diesel is imported to California from China in the next few years.
You're right. If you have a location that's environmentally controlled, and California is the most environmentally controlled location in the world, if you want to basically build something, you want to build it here under the most environmentally controlled conditions.
Exactly.
But instead, the government wants to get rid of it and have it done outside the borders of California. I joke that Governor Newsom only breathes air within the borders of California. If it's outside the borders, he doesn't breathe that.
Is that because of his hair filter that he's got?
I'm not sure. But yeah, it's okay to have our products made outside the borders of California because he doesn't breathe that. If there's no emission controls, that's okay. That's for someone else to breathe. And yeah, it's crazy. He's just trying to, I joke, I've got two sentences when I talk about Newsom. And there's a 1 second pause between them. First sentence, Governor Newsom is doing a fantastic job. Pause, of killing the California economy. He couldn't do a better job. I mean, he's driving up the cost of everything. Everything is very inflationary. We have a $16 an hour minimum wage here, and it's crazy. And, to go out to eat is just cost a fortune. And it's really bad because, the other thing that people don't recognize is most people don't have the ability to save money. They're in debt with school, auto loans, credit cards, and they just put things on a credit card and just keep adding to their debt. And if they happen to, lose a job, because most people don't have many savings, they're one paycheck away from joining the homeless.
Exactly.
And it's really pathetic. You see people going to Disneyland with families, and you look at them and say, whoa, they can't afford the price of admission, but they put it on their credit card. And
with insurance has almost quadrupled for EV owners. Now, homeowners insurance in California has got to be tough too.
Very tough. Yeah, a lot of insurance companies already left California. And with the devastating fires we've had the last couple of weeks, there might be more insurance companies leaving California.
Ronald, how do companies cancel insurance policies 2 months before a fire? I was watching where we had people got notices that right before the fire that they don't have homeowners insurance. And now they've got a multi-million-dollar home burned down and they can't get enough money for what they owe on it.
Well, the insurance companies, they recognize reality. We've had a couple of years of pretty good rain. Well, that's the good news and the bad news. Well, that rain has allowed plants to grow. Well, when you lose rain, you now have a lot of fuel that the Santa Ana winds are drying out. So it's great fuel, and one little spark, and it all goes. And they knew it was coming.
And the mismanagement of the funds to build the retaining areas for the water was not even implemented. That's amazing.
You need water for that? Oh, and the other thing, too, is, like I said, when you have a vast area like that, when you got torpedo winds coming through, the fire department can't fight anything. So they have to wait for the winds to die down. And by that time, you've given the fire like 10 hours of uncontrolled growth. And the idea of turning on all the hydrants at the same time, give me a break. And Governor Newsom was a study why there was no water pressure. Go to your house, turn on all the faucets, turn on flush all the toilets at the same time, turn your sprinklers on, and see how much water dribbles out of your faucets.
Ronald, it broke my heart when I was seeing the one guy standing there and he got a gasoline pump, and he was pumping water out of his pool to save his house.
Yes.
So he saved his house using a gasoline pump that is now banned in California. You can't buy this kind of stupid. I can't. You can't even buy that water pump from your back. If you've got a pool in your backyard, you're not allowed to have a pump to pump out and spray your property with your pool water.
No comment.
How are we going to get? How are the houses going to get rebuilt with the permitting the issues going on? That is amazing to me.
Well, I was talking to my sons at lunch, and we're of the opinion it may not be rebuilt. You take one area, Pacific Palisades, you got 1,000 homes gone. 1 or 2 survived, so they got survivor's guilt. Right. But if you can afford to rebuild, do you want to rebuild in an area that is a war zone? You'd be the only house there?
James Wood, God bless James Wood, and his house survived. And, he didn't have insurance. So I'm very happy for him that it did. And he's going to be trying to help out folks as well. But his neighbor helped save him with his pool water. But good grief, you're right. The neighbor, it looks like a war zone.
It is. And it's, and to clear it out, it's going to take years to clear it out.
And lots of permits.
Well, permits in California?
Oh, my goodness.
And the motivation, what's going to motivate someone to rebuild a house in a war zone? Like I say, given 10 or 20 years, maybe to be rebuilt all 1,000 houses. But in the interim, how do you drive to your house? The roads are just a mess. And
Did you see the X post the other day where they had 8 Ukrainian generals had their multi-million dollar homes burned down in California? And I'm like, is this a joke? I didn't ever find out if that was real or not. Why are Ukrainian generals buying multi-million dollar houses in California? You can't make that one up.
it was great. The weather's great. Got the rains in California. That's the good news and the bad news.
Yeah. Well, what do you see the Trump administration? We know that oil prices dropped today on inauguration, thinking that everybody's going to drill more, and that's just not going to be the case because I think ESG has done a good thing for oil companies over the last 10 years to 15 years. They're a lot more fiscally responsible, giving their shareholder their money back. So I think fiscal responsibility in the oil business has been established. I don't think drill baby drill is going to happen.
No, we have to, we have to take a look at the other side of the picture too, that the earth has so many resources and we've been extracting these resources, oil, coal, lithium, cobalt, and our 4 billion year old planet is not replenishing these resources. So the goal is not to drill baby drill. We just got to become more and more efficient because,
I agree.
If we run out of oil, run out of coal, it's eventually going to run out. I mean, you can't keep taking millions of barrels out of every day and expect it to be, endless. And so, it'll run out at some time. It might be, 500 years, 1,000 years. But the one thing we do know, this 4 billion year old planet, it'll be here with or without us.
I just bought this, and I'm surprising you with this one. And this one is called The Manual of Free Energy Devices and Systems. And it's got all of the patents and how people make these things. And there is a correlation of people that come up with these free energy devices that end up dead. Yeah, it's kind of like, so you sit back and go, I think technology is going to be the end of oil at some time. I would be thrilled out of my mind, just like you said. Let's quit using oil and gas if something else can take its place.
Exactly, if there's a replacement. And we have no replacement in mind yet. And that's the confusion of the use of the word energy, because all the politicians say, well, wind and solar energy is going to replace fossil fuels. But
right.
Time out. Wind and solar only generates electricity. They don't make anything. And we can't survive on electricity by itself.
Last time I checked, you can't make fertilizer out of a windmill. Need a little bit of natural gas on that one.
But, my motivation is to have conversations. Because I can understand, Newsom takes a stand, but let's talk about it. You want to get rid of oil and run the state of California without oil?
Let's plan it.
How are you going to do it?
Yeah. And you know what the funny thing is? You and I are in agreement. Let's get rid of oil. Great. But let's have a plan. Let's make sure the economy stays on target. Let's make sure everybody's employed and has a paycheck and can afford their house and plan for it. But it seems like nobody plans for it. They want to say, here's your EV and you got to have it now. In my opinion, Ronald, is I think Tesla is going to be a survivor. It is going to be the premier EV. If you want an EV, I think it's going to be great. And I'm going to go on record, I've got to go buy a Ford 250 just because of the trailers that I have to pull and everything else. But I want a Cybertruck. I would love a Cybertruck, especially when I go to town. It's bulletproof. And people want to shoot at me just because I'm a podcast host and I've voiced I am kidding, but I like the idea of a bulletproof car. But the thing about an EV, I actually sat in and I was sitting there looking, and a guy had an EMF radar thing, and he was pulling it around in the EV, and I'm sitting there kind of going, I don't know that I want to sit in this car very much longer, because that thing was just redlined, and we're in a Cybertruck kind of doing this, and that thing was hot. It was not healthy for that much electromagnetic waves coming off of that car.
The one thing that people don't recognize is the EV, how much dependent it is on oil. Because the 1,000-pound battery, A 1,000-pound battery with all lithium and cobalt, manganese, all the metals, you got to move about 500,000 pounds of earth to make one battery. And here in
Say that
California,
again, 500,000 pounds of earth.
to get enough exotic minerals and metals to make one battery.
Is that tons or pounds?
Tons.
500,000 tons.
Yeah, 500,000 pounds of earth. Now, here in California, our governor wants the 18-wheelers to go EV. Well, Stu, the battery for an EV truck is 16,000 pounds. So to make one truck battery, you got to move 8 million pounds of earth to make one truck battery. And the mining equipment in these developing countries are huge.
Wow.
I mean, they happen to be driven by oil, diesel,
and then you got to ship it here.
It's crazy.
And it's got to get shipped to China to be made into a battery and then shipped across the pond. So you think about how many miles in shipping that you've got. Holy smokes.
Well, the Tesla is 100% made from oil. The tires, the computers, the batteries. I mean, it's without oil, you have no vehicles. And
wow.
I'm just amazed that our leaders, like Governor Newsom, is so inclined to basically drive oil out of the state of California. He'd like to drive it out of the world, but he only controls California. And it's really pathetic. He won't get involved in a discussion.
Do you think he has a chance on the next election?
No. I mean, that was one of the reasons that Kamala got a stop, because she had California tattooed on her forehead. And nobody wants to be like California. We got the highest cost of electricity, highest cost of fuel, unbelievable inflation. And, the rest of the country doesn't want that. And, he's going to be a disaster. But ironically, I got to basically tell the truth about California citizens. If he was eligible to run again for governor,
right,
because he's terming out in 26, California citizens would reelect him. You can't blame the governor. You got to basically look at the citizens. You're picking this Yahoo, that's killing the economy, and you want him back. And I'm hoping that this disaster we've had over the last couple of weeks in the fires leads to resignation of our governor and our mayor.
The mayor, oh my, she was part of a communist regime change group. And I am serious. That woman went to Cuba. Early on, she's part of a communist group wanting the downfall of the United States. Why is she a United States mayor? I don't get it.
Well, it's not a United States mayor, the California mayor. California, I'm not sure California's part of the United States anymore.
Good point. I stand corrected at my deepest apologies.
But I have no sympathy for the California citizens. They're electing these people that are killing the economy, killing the environment, and it's just devastating. And
do you think there's any chance of getting rid of the Dominion election machines in California?
Well, the election machines are made from oil, so.
Then you would think that they'd want to get rid of them if they were made from oil, that they'd want to get rid of them, but I don't know that they're willing to give up their election fraud capable machines.
I don't either. I think we should have election by hand, raising hands.
And count them, We want to see you. Now that we've totally lost control of this podcast, do you see some real sanity coming into energy? And do you see Governor Newsom and President Trump working together, because I see that if he's trying, Governor Newsom, or a new scam, as President Trump calls him, said he's trying to Trump-proof. He spent an extra couple $1 billion trying to Trump-proof California.
Right.
You're not going to be a good guy. If I was President Trump, I'd say, I don't want to give you any federal money. Have a good day.
It's going to be a tough one, because California owes the feds $20 billion. When the COVID hit, the unemployment insurance budget within California wasn't enough. And we have to borrow $20 billion from the feds. And Newsom just showed his balanced budget. He has no intention of paying that back. And so if you're Trump, here's a state that owes you $20 billion.
Right.
We're a sanctuary state. We got those free-flowing people coming over the border. And every city says, we're a sanctuary state. Come on to our city.
And the Fed just announced that they're not going to be having any money coming into the federal treasury, and it'll be the first time in a long time. And now, so you don't have any money coming into the treasury from the Fed. I'm like, let's get rid of the Fed too.
Well, like you say, with California owing the Feds $20 billion and violating federal immigration laws, and yet we have to go to ask for, give me more money.
Right.
Feds are saying, well, hey, you're violating federal laws. You're not paying us back. You're going to be on our do-do list.
Oh, absolutely. This is going to be, I'll tell you what, 2025 is going to be a very entertaining year to be in the energy space, let alone just as a Californian. What part of California are you living in right now?
We're in Southern California. We're in the urban area, the Orange County Airport. We're not that far from there. We're about 50 miles south of all the fires. And, we're a long state. We're a long state. And it's interesting because the weather's perfect. The sun's shining, there's no smoke, being 50 miles south of it. And it's amazing that there's a war zone an hour and a half drive from us, north of us.
That is just crazy. That is absolutely crazy. And we sit back. What are some of your biggest predictions coming around for 2025 for the U.S.?
Well, Stu, I think myself, guys like Alex Epstein, other guys like that around the world, I think we're making progress in providing energy literacy to the world. And there's more and more people writing articles like myself around the world. And my articles get published weekly at America Out Loud News and get reposted around the world and probably get exposed to maybe 500,000 people. And my motivation is I'm trying to stimulate conversations.
Right.
This idea of taking a microphone, take Joe Biden. He was famous. He's flying around in a 400-ton airplane, 100% made with oil products to make the plane, powered by aviation fuel, which comes from oil, and he's screaming in the microphone, we're going to get rid of oil. Give me a break, Stu. The only good thing about getting rid of oil is you ground Air Force One. It's crazy. And then Newsom, the only good thing about getting rid of oil for Newsom, he wouldn't have any grease to comb his hair.
I made a joke one time, and I said if he fell into the bay, that they would have he'd have to get called by the EPA for an oil slick.
Oil slick, that's right.
And that one got banned on YouTube as well, too. And you cannot make a joke against Governor Newsom and his hair. I didn't think that was very funny. I thought it was, but
if you want to run the economy, we're a materialistic society.
Right.
But right now, we enjoy like 2,000 products that are made from the oil derivatives manufactured from oil because crude oil by itself is useless. Black tar, can't use it. But with human ingenuity, we can basically throw it through a refinery and they heat it, they beat it, they crack it, and all these crazy things to it. And you get these derivatives that we use to make products. When you think about everything that needs electricity, I'll use that word again, everything that needs electricity, the iPhone, the iPad, your television, et cetera, is made from those oil derivatives.
Right.
So you get rid of oil, you're going to get rid of iPads, you get rid of iPhones and televisions. Communications didn't exist 200 years ago, other than smoke screens.
Right.
So like I say, we have before 1800s we had no oil, and that's where we're going to go unless there's a substitute or a clone to oil, and we have yet to identify that. And wind and solar energy is not replacing oil because it's only generating electricity.
Right.
If you get rid of oil, we got 6 ways to generate electricity. As I mentioned, you got, coal, natural gas, hydro, nuclear, wind and solar, and all the components, the computers, the electronics, the wiring, the insulation, it's all made from oil. And so if we want to go back to the 1800s, let's get rid of oil.
Wow.
It's a sad thing. And there's no conversations. That's the thing that I promote. Is having a conversation. When my articles go out, and usually I'm on 1 or 2 podcasts a week, and the article is basically the questions to me, and we have a discussion. But there's no discussion with the people that have the microphone. We're going to get rid of oil.
That's funny.
I'm all for it, but how are you going to run the economy without it?
And I think eventually, if we go to the free energy type products, you're still going to need oil for those products. I mean, even if you had all the free electricity you wanted, you're going to need oil.
Well, the book title said Free Energy Devices.
Right.
Now, it's really free devices. You're talking about, iPads and iPhones and telecommunications. I tend to be very restrictive of using the word energy. I either use electricity or products.
That's a great point.
One or the other.
That's right.
There's a misconception of the word energy. Wind and solar is going to replace fossil fuels. Wind and solar energy is going to replace fossil fuel energy. But fossil fuel, when you think about it, coal is used for power generation.
The title of this should be The Manual of Free Electrical Generation Devices, because that's what all of these are. They're generating electricity for free out of the different magnets and those kind of things.
But you can't make a magnet unless you have oil.
but you could sure cut down on the amount of fossil fuels that you would use if you had those kind of things. And I think we're in agreement that that's not a bad thing. It's just, how do you get there?
Right. Now we have to continue working on efficiencies and conservation, human ingenuity. The first cars got, 8 miles to a gallon. Now they're getting 40 and 50 miles to a gallon. So we gotta, we have oil, and we don't want to just throw it away because we have it.
My last Ford 250 got 9 miles to the gallon. It's funny you mentioned that. I loved it. Holy smokes, that pig was very expensive to run. I needed it.
Yes. So that we got to focus on conservation, but I encourage people to stop using the word energy. Do you want electricity or you want products? Because wind and solar only generate electricity. They can make no products. Whereas oil, now coal is used for power plant generation. Natural gas is used for power plants. But oil is never used to generate electricity. As mentioned, oil is useless. It's black tar. Right. I mean, the Beverly Hillbillies knew that.
Well, fuel oil is used in Hawaii. 60% of Hawaii is fuel oil, which is it's even worse than diesel as far as where it is in the refinery chart. When they bring it into the refinery chart and everything else, fuel
oil is manufactured from crude oil.
Oil, right? Exactly.
It's a low grade, but again, if you didn't have that kind of oil, you'd have no electricity.
You really don't need to be using fuel oil at all, and at this day and age. Now, natural gas is something that's different. I'm all in. Use all the natural gas you want. I think that would be, because I think it is a lot cleaner burning than either coal or fuel oil.
I think we're going to see a resurrection of the interest in nuclear. We'll take the Navy. We got a 70-year track record. The Navy's got to think about 80 vessels, aircraft carriers, submarines, all nuclear powered. They use no fossil fuels.
But we buy 80% of our uranium from sanctioned countries.
But the interesting thing, too, is nuclear is proliferating around the world. I think there's about 60 nuclear power plants now under construction.
Right.
And the United States used to be the leader in nuclear, but because nuclear has got the bad word, we're basically delegating the control of that technology to China and Russia, and you're going to see a resurrection of nuclear. You want zero emission electricity? You want continuous electricity? Nuclear is the way to go.
I couldn't agree more. When you take a look at, we have 419 nuclear facilities around the world.
Right.
We have 69 under construction. We have 92 under pre-construction. That's a lot. I did not even know that. We have 178 announced.
And they're all outside the United States.
One is in pre-construction and one is announced in the U.S. Turkey Point Nuclear Power Station is in pre-construction, and Surrey Green Nuclear Center is now announced.
When I mentioned the thing about the Earth has so many resources, the amount of lithium and cobalt needed, we know the oil, we've got a lot of technology, and technology develops more and more oil sources, like fracking. With technology, we can get more and more oil, but it gets to the point, you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. And one thing we don't know how much lithium and cobalt there is in the world.
Right.
And, most of it's being provided, by India and South America. And it's very limited in supply. And you can't mine for lithium in the United States. God forbid. I mean, that is dirty mining. And if you want to, if it's here, it's not attainable because you're not going to get a permit. Environmentalists aren't going to let you mine for lithium here. It's okay if they mine for it over there. We can't see what's going on.
Right. I don't get that. Just as a side note, for what is announced pre-construction and construction is 9,900 megawatts of nuclear power.
That'll keep a couple light bulbs lit.
Yes. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing. And again, that's conservation because you're going to have that continuous electricity. The neat thing about nuclear, it uses very little material to make it. It uses very little land for a nuclear power plant, and it just generates power. And right now, the slightly used nuclear fuel there's about 97% of the energy still left in it. So the fast breeder reactors are going to be using so-called nuclear waste to power it. Right. So it's a matter of, continued conservation and efficiencies. And, what better way to generate unlimited electricity, zero emission electricity, continuous supply of electricity, and you're not weather dependent on nuclear power plant running.
And the footprint is what gets me the biggest difference on a nuclear power plant versus wind farms or solar farms. You take a look at here's a 10-acre lot, boom, there's your.
And the same concept about the small modular reactors. They are small modular reactors. You can put in a SMR in a community of 100,000 in a remote location and, empower them with continuous electricity forever.
Do you see that nuclear, because if we could tackle the nuclear propulsion, the U.S. Navy has done it great. You bring up our Navy. Man, yes. They have done a phenomenal job. I was reading where one of the aircraft carriers could go for 2 years without refueling. It has two small nuclear reactors on board. That's a strong testimony. Think about
the other testimony is, in fact, if you take a step back and take a look how big that aircraft carrier is. I mean, it's basically an airport on the water.
City. It is a city on the water.
Yeah, and the fact it requires no fuel to run, no oil fuel.
Right.
But yeah, that's amazing. And like I said, we got a 70-year track record right there, safety track record.
Right. Yeah, and what gets me is we also there are 6 nuclear reactors or ships that Russia has for their Arctic icebreakers. And those are getting a workout right now. And they are really, because the Arctic run going over is really from Russia. Oil going to China is really they're really going after it up there. So there's a lot to be said for having a nuclear icebreaker.
Yes. And I think we could actually reduce our use of oil if we started using it, because I think we're wasting oil by mining for lithium and cobalt because it, has a limited lifespan. Mm-hmm. And then we have, how do we dispose of it? A lot of the fires that happened in the Pacific Palisades, these people, just like myself in the Irvine area, most of my neighbors have EVs. They don't use them, they're parked in the garage. And the same thing in the Pacific Palisades. A lot of cars were parked in the garage that burned. So the EVs, with an EV, when it burns, it's not a fire you can put out because it's a chemical fire. It requires, tons and tons of water to put out one EV battery power. And a lot of those EVs burn, and now you got that toxic waste into the soil. And who knows if they ever decide to clear out Pacific Palisades, it could be a toxic waste dump.
My goodness, I didn't even think of that.
And then you want people to rebuild their house?
No, I just bought a backhoe, and I'm having a lot of fun diverting all the water on my property onto my neighbor's property. He is a left-wing nut job, and I'm having a lot of fun throwing rocks, putting them in water. But at least if I get my Cybertruck, I'll be able to dig all the bad chemicals out, and I'll get a hazmat suit now. So if I have to ever dig out the fire battery for it.
Well, and environmentally, here in California, we have a lot of oil offshore. But with technology, there's no offshore drilling required. You drill on land and slant drill to get the oil. I mean, technology has made getting the oil much more cost effective, much more environmentally, sensitive. But the bottom line is, we have to keep focusing on conservation and efficiencies because just because we have this stuff,
This is cool.
yeah, we just can't use it and throw it away.
Well, how do people get a hold of you?
You can just Google my name, Ronald Stein, energy consultant, energy literacy, all over the internet. And and like I say, it's easy to you Google my name and you can drop me a note and I'll add you to my distribution list. And my articles, like I say, they go up weekly, and I encourage people to share them with your friends.
We will have one of your links in there for everybody as they listen to this podcast, because I want people to reach out to you and buy your books. So we'll have those in the show notes as well too. So
Energy literacy exploitations, talks about all the exotic minerals and metals to go green are coming from developing countries that have no labor controls, no environmental controls. We're exploiting people with yellow, brown, and black skin to mine for that stuff, and the environmental degradation is atrocious. But that's okay. We're going green.
I think as we're winding this down, I think that we're going to see 2025 as a very interesting year, especially because when you look at the banks that have stepped away from the net zero funding, and they're getting out of those funds, and they're realizing that the climate scam is out there is truly a wealth transfer, and people are tired of it.
Yes, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, myself and hundreds of people like me that are writing articles, I think we're getting to the public and educating them, because that's the motivation I have, is to have people have some energy literacy. Have a conversation about this, because this idea of jumping off the bridge without a parachute, it's not such a good idea.
No. And, you can't just shut it off. Now, the folks that glue themselves to highways and things, there's a couple states that have just said it's okay to run over them, and I'm like, what? I did not see that on my bingo card this year. That it would be okay to run over somebody that glues their hand to the thing. I think that's bad.
Get them out of the way.
Get them out of the way. Like, what? Anyway, well, thank you very much for stopping by, Ronald. I do appreciate you.
Still always enjoyed chatting. It's a great pleasure. And
we'll see
have a great day. And